If you think your family loves you, wait until you stop paying their bills. Mine showed their true colors the night they shut the door on me. I still remember standing on my son Michael Carter's porch, holding my warm cinnamon pear loaf like it was some kind of peace offering. I'm Evelyn, 71. Too old to be nervous but somehow still was. Michael told me to come at 6 sharp for a little family dinner. His words. And I'd spent all morning baking his favorite bread. The one he used to sneak slices of when he was a kid. But before I even reached for the doorbell, it cracked open a few inches. Lauren, my daughter-in-law, peeked out with that tight, polite smile she saves for people she doesn't want inside. "Oh, Evelyn," she said, voice sugar-coated but cold. "I think Michael forgot to mention, tonight isn't a good night." Before I could respond, Michael stepped behind her. Taller now, broader, wearing that expensive jacket I'd helped him buy when money was tight. Funny how everything is always tight on their end, but never tight enough to skip a vacation. "Mom," he said quietly, "tonight's more of a professional thing. Just co-workers. You'd feel out of place." Out of place? In the house I helped them pay for. The house I still cover half the bills for. The house where my presence was suddenly inconvenient. I clutched the loaf a little closer. "I thought I was invited," I said. Michael looked away. Lauren didn't. She lifted her chin like a judge handing down a sentence. "It's just better if you sit this one out. It's a certain image." Image. That word cut deeper than any insult. I stepped back slowly. Michael exhaled like my leaving solved his whole night. The door shut before I even hit the walkway. Driving home, I realized they hadn't just uninvited me from dinner. They'd uninvited me from my own place in their lives. But they had no idea what was coming next, because that night, for the first time in decades, I started choosing myself. And once I began, there was no going back. You ever feel your heart drop so hard it's almost quiet? That's what happened when I opened the folder that proved my family didn't love me. They just loved my money. When I got home after that humiliating night, I didn't turn on a single light. I walked through my quiet house by memory, the same way I'd walked through life lately, not really seen, just navigating. I set the untouched cinnamon loaf on the counter. The kitchen felt colder than usual. Like even the walls were waiting for me to finally admit the truth. I pulled open the drawer where I keep every important paper, though none of them ever felt important until right now. The drawer stuck, like always, groaning like an old friend trying to warn me. I tugged harder, and finally it slid open. There it was. A thick, overstuffed folder labeled Household Support Carter Family. What a joke. The only household it supported was theirs. I carried the folder to the kitchen table, my hands shaking, not from age, but from the weight of years I had never counted before. I opened it, and the first page hit me like a punch. A check for $8,500, Mike's job transition. I remember that year. He said he needed space to find himself. Turns out he found my checkbook instead. Next page. $720, Lauren's professional wardrobe. She said it was crucial for her image. Funny how that word keeps following her around. Then came the insurance payments, car repairs, dog grooming, for a dog they don't even let me pet, subscription boxes, landscaping, school fees, pages and pages of things that were supposed to be temporary but had become permanent. I counted them. One by one. 103 payments. All coming from me. And the part that hurt the most? Not once, not a single time in all those years, did they ask if it was too much for me. They just assumed I'd keep giving. I closed the folder gently, like it might crumble under the truth. They weren't relying on me. They were using me. And I didn't know it then, but this little folder was about to become the spark that set everything in motion. The moment the giver finally stopped giving. You ever stare at proof of your own mistake so long it feels like it's staring back at you? That's how it felt the morning I finally admitted I'd been funding a family that didn't even want me around. I woke up before sunrise, not because I slept lightly, but because my mind wouldn't let me rest. I lay there listening to the quiet thump of the furnace kicking on, and the soft hum of the refrigerator. Two things I paid for without anyone's help. Funny how the only things that depend on me still give something back. When I walked into the kitchen, that folder was still sitting on the table like it hadn't moved all night. I almost closed it. Habit. For years, I'd been cleaning up messes before dealing with the feelings behind them. But this time was different. Something inside me said sit. Look. Count. So I did. I poured myself a cup of tea, then pulled the folder toward me and spread the papers out. Line after line of payments, transfers, autodrafts, urgent contributions, the history of a woman trying too hard to be needed. Mortgage assistance, cable bills, gym memberships, a monthly snack subscription for the kids, even a premium dog treat plan. I whispered each total under my breath, the numbers piling up until they felt heavier than the house around me. 37, 59, 82, 103. When I reached the final page, I didn't feel shock anymore. Just a deep, heavy clarity. Lauren once said, "You live more comfortably than you should at your age." But I looked around my little house, peeling paint, thrift store dishes, a car that rattles when it's cold, and I realized she wasn't talking about comfort. She was talking about my money. I picked up my pen and opened my old notebook. I wrote 3 headings. What I give, what I lose, what I keep. The first column filled instantly. The second, heartbreakingly fast. The third stayed almost blank. That emptiness told the truth I had refused to say out loud. I had given everything except myself. But I was done being empty. And the moment I decided to change that, well, that decision was about to turn their entire world upside down. You ever hear a message so disrespectful it snaps something inside you? That's what happened the morning Lauren texted me like I was some burden ruining her perfect little routine. The sun hadn't even finished rising when my phone buzzed across the table. I was pouring tea, trying to calm the storm inside me, when the screen lit up with her name. Lauren. Michael and I talked. Please stop dropping by unannounced. It stresses us out. Unannounced. Uninvited. Unwanted. All the same word dressed in different outfits. I hadn't dropped by unannounced. I'd been invited, then dismissed, like an old umbrella they didn't need when the weather cleared. Before I could put the phone down, another message came through. Faster. Sharper. And please stop making things uncomfortable. We're under a lot of pressure. Uncomfortable. There it was again. I sat down slowly, letting the words settle in my chest. They felt like tiny stones being piled on top of each other. Not heavy enough to crush me, but heavy enough to change me. I looked at the folder spread out across the kitchen table. All my payments. All my sacrifices. All the ways I held their lives together. And in return, I was stressed. I was uncomfortable. I was too much. Instead of answering, I opened my old notebook again. The column stared back at me. What I give. What I lose. What I keep. For the first time, the third column didn't scare me. It didn't feel empty. It felt ready. I wrote something new under what I keep. My boundaries. Then another. My dignity. I closed the notebook softly. The house felt different. Cooler, but clearer. Like the air right before a storm breaks. Just then another buzz. But this one wasn't Lauren or Michael. It was my granddaughter, Sophie. The only person who loved me without needing anything from me. Her message. Grandma, I'm coming over. Don't worry, I'm on your side. And right there, something inside me clicked into place. I had no idea, but Sophie's visit wasn't just comfort. It was the first domino in a chain reaction that would change every single thing between me and my son. You ever have someone walk into your house and remind you what real love feels like? That's what happened when Sophie showed up that afternoon. No demands, no judgment, just genuine concern. And God, I didn't realize how much I'd missed that. I heard her footsteps on the porch before she even knocked. Light, quick, familiar. Nothing like the stiff, impatient tap Lauren uses when she feels she has authority over me. Sophie always knocks gently, like she respects the space she's entering. When I opened the door, she was standing there clutching her backpack, cheeks red from the wind, her hair pulled into a messy bun she clearly threw together in the car. "Grandma," she breathed out. "Tell me you're okay." Her voice cracked on the last word. And just like that, something inside me softened in a way it hadn't for anyone else in a long time. "I'm all right, sweetheart," I said, stepping aside so she could come in. She wrapped her arms around me as soon as she crossed the threshold. It wasn't a polite hug either. It was tight, grounding, the kind that makes your heart remember it's still beating. She pulled back, eyes bright with worry. Dad and Lauren are freaking out. Like yelling, pacing, slamming doors, kind of freaking out. I almost whispered, good. But instead I said, I figured they might be. We sat at the kitchen table. She watched me closely, not studying, not judging, just trying to understand. I saw Mom's texts, she admitted. She left her phone on the counter. Grandma, the things she said about you? They were cruel. Cruel. A word I'd avoided for years. Sophie's voice lowered. She said you complicate things. She said you take things personally. And she said older people should learn to live with less. There it was. Hearing it from my granddaughter sliced deeper than hearing it from Lauren. I reached across the table and touched Sophie's hand. I'm sorry you had to hear that. No, she said, squeezing my fingers. I'm sorry you had to live with it. Her loyalty hit me harder than any paycheck I'd ever given her parents. Grandma, she whispered, whatever you're planning, I'm with you. And that's when I knew I wasn't fighting alone. But neither of us realized then. My next move wouldn't just shake up Michael and Lauren. It would send a shockwave straight through the entire Carter family. You ever feel clarity hit you so hard it's almost physical? That's what happened the moment I stepped into the bank. I wasn't scared. I wasn't unsure. I was finally done being everybody's safety net. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of calm. Not peace exactly, more like purpose. Purpose strong enough to pull me out of bed before the sun even stretched over the treetops. I dressed slowly, choosing my old gray coat, the one with the deep pockets and the stubborn zipper. Then I drove to Fairmont Community Bank, arriving a full 20 minutes before they opened. The air was brisk, my breath fogging as I waited outside the glass doors. I wasn't shaky. I wasn't uncertain. My hands only trembled with the feeling of finally taking back something that should have never been given away. At 9 sharp, the doors unlocked. A young teller with a too big smile greeted me, but I didn't need him. I needed someone who knew my history. Is Linda Parker in? I asked. She was my account manager for over a decade, back when Michael still called me Mom, without sounding like he wanted something. The teller nodded and led me back. Linda looked up from her desk, her warm, steady expression softening even more when she saw me. Evelyn, she said kindly. What can I do for you today? I sat down, folding my hands to keep them from shaking. Linda, I said, I need to cancel every automatic payment I've been sending to my son's household. Every single one. Her eyebrows lifted, not in judgment, but in careful understanding. That's quite a few, Evelyn. 103, I replied. I counted. She nodded slowly, clicked her computer awake, and began the work. Not once did she ask me if I was sure. Not once did she question my clarity. She treated me with the respect my own family had forgotten. Then I added, I also need to revoke the financial access I gave Michael years ago. This time Linda paused, not in surprise but in respect. All right, she said softly. We can take care of that today. Signature after signature, I felt pieces of myself sliding back into place. By the time we finished, my shoulders felt lighter. Like I'd peeled off a backpack full of stones I'd carried for years without noticing. When I walked out of that bank, the air felt completely different, crisper, brighter, almost like it was cheering me on. But I didn't realize that across town, the moment I signed those papers, Michael's entire world had already started cracking. You ever feel the air shift around you, like even the world knows you just changed your whole life? That's how the walk from the bank to my car felt. Like I was finally stepping into a life that actually belonged to me. I sat behind the wheel for a moment, letting the quiet settle. My hands were still trembling, but not from fear, more from the shock of finally doing something for myself. The parking lot was calm, just a few leaves skittering across the pavement, but inside me, something was waking up. There was one more stop I had to make. I drove downtown, passing the shops Michael always said he'd take over someday. Promises he never meant, dreams he expected someone else to fund. The elevator in the old brick building groaned its way up to the second floor. The carpet was still the same faded green it had been for years, and the air smelled like old coffee and paper, oddly comforting. When I stepped into Attorney James Nolan's office, he looked up with recognition and a kindness I hadn't felt in a long time. "Evelyn," he said, rising, "it's been a while. What brings you in?" I sat down, adjusting my coat, steadying myself. "James, I need to update my will. And I need to restructure everything I plan to leave to my son." His eyes softened. He didn't ask why. He didn't pry. He just nodded and opened a folder. "Tell me what you want to change." I exhaled deeply, the words rolling out easier than I expected. "I want to create a trust. For my granddaughter, Sophie. Not for Michael. Not for Lauren. I want my assets protected, and I want the person who actually treats me like family to inherit what I've worked for." James studied me for a long, quiet moment. "Are you acting out of anger?" he asked gently. "No," I said. "I'm acting out of clarity." He smiled a slow, approving smile. "Then let's get to work." For the next hour, we went through forms, signatures, plans, building a future that finally aligned with my dignity. When I signed the last page, something in my chest loosened. The kind of looseness that feels like breathing after years of holding your breath. I left the office with the weight of decades lifted. But while I felt lighter, across town, Michael was watching his financial world collapse in real time. And he was about to come looking for answers. You ever come home and feel your own silence hug you tighter than your family ever has? That's how it felt walking into my house after changing my entire future. The world outside was chaos, but inside everything finally made sense. When I stepped through my front door, the house felt almost proud of me. Strange thing to say, I know, but after years of being everyone else's backbone, it felt like the walls themselves were whispering, "You finally did it." I hung my coat on the rack, made myself a cup of tea, and sat in my favorite chair by the window. The same chair that held me through grief, loneliness, and all the tiny heartbreaks I never mentioned to Michael. For the first time in years, I put my phone face down. I didn't need to check it. I didn't owe anyone my attention. I didn't owe explanations. I didn't owe guilt. I owed myself peace, and I was taking it. The silence in the house wasn't heavy anymore. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't emptiness. It was freedom. Then the buzzing started. One vibration. Then another. Then another. Michael. Lauren. Unknown numbers. Voicemails. Missed calls. The little chime of panic arriving through text. I didn't reach for the phone. Instead, I took a sip of my tea and watched a single golden leaf drift down from the tree outside. Peace felt unfamiliar, but I was learning it, slowly, breath by breath. After an hour, curiosity made me flip the phone over. I didn't open anything, but the previews told me enough. Michael. Mom, something's wrong with the mortgage. Call me ASAP. Lauren. The utilities bounced. This isn't funny. More messages came rapidly, each more frantic than the last. Their world, built on my money, was finally shaking. And I felt nothing. Not guilt. Not fear. Not obligation. Just a quiet, steady certainty. This was their weight to carry now. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the calm settle deeper. I'd spent decades fixing everything for everyone. And look where it got me. Standing outside my son's door with a homemade loaf he didn't want. Not anymore. But the real shock wasn't their texts. It was what happened the moment they realized I wasn't answering. And that their safety net had truly disappeared. You ever feel a banging on your door so loud it shakes the whole house? That's what yanked me out of my calm. The moment Michael showed up furious, panicked, and entirely unprepared for the new version of me. It didn't start as knocking. It started as pounding, sharp, impatient, the kind that says the person on the other side thinks they own the place. I didn't rush. I didn't even stand up right away. I set my mug down, smoothed the blanket over my lap, and only then walked to the door. The whole time, the pounding kept going. Mom. Open the door. Now. The demand in his voice used to make me jump. Years of training, I guess, being the fixer, the peacekeeper, the wallet. But now? It just sounded childish. When I opened the door, Michael pushed his way halfway inside before stopping. His face was red, hair messy like he'd been yanking at it on the way over. "Mom, what the hell is going on?" he barked. I raised an eyebrow. "Hello to you too. This isn't funny." He held up his phone. The utilities bounced. The mortgage bounced. Even the stupid dog grooming subscription bounced. "What did you do?" I crossed my arms. "I stopped paying for adults who should pay for themselves." He scoffed. Actually scoffed. "Mom, be serious. We rely on that money. I told you, my job's in a slow season. And Lauren, I cut in, is an adult too. You're married. You have 2 incomes. You can handle your own bills." His jaw dropped like I'd spoken another language. "You can't just cut everything off without warning." "Oh, Michael," I said quietly. "I warned you for years. You just never listened." For a moment, he looked like he didn't know whether to yell or beg. His anger cracked just enough for panic to slip through. "Mom, we can't manage without you." The words were supposed to guilt me. Instead, they sounded like the truth finally showing itself. "You shouldn't be managing with me," I replied. "You should be managing on your own." He stared at me like he was seeing a stranger, but he had no idea the real shock was still coming, because Lauren was marching up my driveway, and she wasn't coming quietly. You ever watch someone walk toward you with that look? The one that tells you they're ready to blame you for everything wrong in their life? That was Lauren stomping up my driveway, and the second I saw her face, I knew she wasn't here to talk. She was here to attack. I stood in the doorway beside Michael, but she didn't even acknowledge him. She marched straight up to me like she was the sheriff of the whole damn neighborhood. "Evelyn," she snapped. "What did you do? No greeting. No respect. Just entitlement wrapped in a cheap perfume cloud." I leaned against the doorframe, calm as a lake. "Good morning, Lauren." "Don't start with that," she spat. "We just got notices from the bank." Everything bounced. Everything. Do you understand how humiliating that is? I tilted my head. Humiliating? Honey, it's called adulthood. Her face twisted. "You can't just pull funding like that." Funding. Not help. Not support. Funding. Like I was their personal investor. Michael tried stepping in. "Mom, seriously. This isn't like you." "No," I said. "This is like me. It's the first time in years I've actually acted in my own interest." Lauren scoffed so loudly it echoed. "This is insane. We depend on that money." "And that," I replied, "is exactly the problem." She jabbed a finger toward my chest. "You're punishing us. That's what this is." "No," I said firmly. "This is me stepping back from being used." Her voice shot up an octave. "Used? You offered. You insisted on helping." "I helped," I said, "because I loved you all. But you didn't love me back. You loved the benefits." For a moment, the anger flickered in her eyes, just enough for truth to shine through. But she shut it down fast. "This is selfish," she hissed. "We have kids, bills, responsibilities." "And I'm a 71-year-old woman," I replied evenly. "My responsibility is to myself now." Lauren looked like she was about to explode. She turned to Michael. "Say something." But Michael didn't speak. He just stared at me, confused, angry, but also scared. Like he was realizing I wasn't going to bend this time. And for once, I didn't fill the silence. I let it sit. I let them feel it. But the real twist? The moment they stormed out of my house, someone else pulled into my driveway. Someone who would change everything they thought they knew about my plans. You ever see a car pull into your driveway and instantly know the energy isn't anger or entitlement, just real concern? That's exactly what I felt when Sophie stepped out of her aunt's sedan like she was on a mission. Michael and Lauren had barely peeled out of my driveway, leaving dust and attitude behind them, when the sedan rolled up slow and careful. The passenger door opened, and there was Sophie. Hair slightly messy, backpack slung over one shoulder, eyes full of determination that didn't belong on a teenager's face. I swear, for a moment it felt like the world pressed pause. She rushed up the steps. "Grandma, are you okay?" Dad looked like he was ready to tear the steering wheel off. I gave her a small smile. "I'm perfectly fine." "You sure?" she asked, searching my face like she expected to find cracks. "Oh, sweetheart," I said. "I'm stronger than they think." She exhaled in relief, then stepped inside, shutting the door behind her. The house instantly felt warmer, like her presence pushed out all the bitterness lingering in the air. She tossed her backpack on a chair. Mom's freaking out. Like, seriously freaking out. She said you're ruining their stability. I chuckled. Their stability was built on my bank account. Sophie dropped into a chair across from me, elbows on her knees. Grandma, I heard something today. Her voice softened. Dad said, she owes us. A cold stillness slid through me. Owes. After everything I'd done. Owes. I sat down slowly. Owes you what, exactly? My entire retirement? My sanity? Sophie shook her head fiercely. You don't owe them anything. And I don't want you feeling bad for any of this. You didn't cause their problems. They did. Her words hit me deeper than she realized. For years I'd been blamed, quietly, subtly, for anything that didn't go perfectly. Now finally someone said the truth out loud. I reached for her hand. Thank you, sweetheart. She squeezed it. I'm on your side. No matter what. And I believed her. Maybe for the first time I truly believed someone meant it. Then she added softly, and Grandma, I think you should know something. Mom and Dad are planning something. Something big. The moment she told me what they were planning, that was the moment I realized the storm wasn't over. No, it was just beginning. You ever hear something so outrageous your whole body just goes still? Like your mind refuses to believe people you love could stoop that low? That was me when Sophie finally told me what her parents were planning. She hesitated at first, chewing her bottom lip the way she did as a little girl whenever she carried a secret too heavy for her small shoulders. I waited, letting her take her time. Grandma, she whispered. Mom said if you don't start paying again, they're going to try to get control of your accounts. For a second, I thought maybe I misheard. Then my heartbeat, normally slow and steady, kicked hard against my ribs. They think you're losing it. Her voice cracked. Mom said if they can convince somebody you're not managing things right, they can take over legally. I sat back, stunned but not surprised. It wasn't the first time Lauren tried to twist a situation, until she came out holding the power. But using me as the excuse? Using my age? That was a new level of heartless. Sophie, I said quietly, did they say this in front of you? She nodded. They didn't know I was listening. I closed my eyes for a moment. Anger didn't hit me all at once. It seeped in slow, cold, and steady, like water rising under a door. The same people who had taken from me for years. The same people who shut me out of a family dinner in my own son's house. The same people who texted me like I was an inconvenience. Now wanted to label me incompetent. To take control. To drain me dry legally. When I opened my eyes again, the softness in me was gone. What replaced it wasn't rage. It was clarity sharpened into steel. Sweetheart, I said. Thank you for telling me the truth. I needed to hear it. She leaned closer. What are you going to do? I looked at her, my granddaughter, the only one who stood by me. And I knew exactly what I had to protect. Not just my money, not just my freedom, but the legacy I wanted her to have. I'm going to make sure they never have that power over me, I told her. Not now. Not ever. But I didn't realize that while I was planning my next move, Michael and Lauren were already driving back. This time not to argue, but to force something much darker. You ever feel the air change before you even hear a sound? Like your instincts know danger is coming before your brain catches up? That's what I felt when Sophie peeked out my window and whispered, Grandma, they're back. I didn't rush to the door. I didn't even stand immediately. I just breathed slowly, letting the truth settle deeper into me. Michael and Lauren weren't coming to talk. They weren't coming to apologize. They were coming because they realized I wasn't bending, and they couldn't control it. Sophie hovered beside me, nervous energy buzzing off her. Should I go upstairs? Do you want me to hide? I shook my head. You're not a child anymore. You stay right here. Before she could respond, the pounding started. Harder than before. The kind of pounding meant to scare someone into compliance. Lauren's shrill voice cut through the wood. Evelyn, open the door. We're done playing around. Michael added. Mom, we're coming in one way or another. I stayed still. Calm. Grounded. Sophie squeezed my arm. They can't force you to open the door, right? No, sweetheart, I said. They can't force anything. But they sure were going to try. The pounding grew louder. More aggressive. They weren't knocking. They were demanding entry like they owned the place. I walked to the door but didn't open it. Instead, I spoke through the wood, voice steady. Michael, Lauren, you need to leave. Lauren scoffed loudly. We're not leaving until we straighten this out. Straighten out what? I asked. My bank account? My decisions? My independence? Silence. The ugly kind. Then Michael said, quieter but sharper. Mom, this is for your own good. That line right there, that manipulative little sentence, is the anthem of people who want control but pretend it's love. I felt Sophie tense beside me. Grandma. I put a hand on her shoulder. It's okay. Then I spoke louder, firm as bedrock. I've fine. I'm capable. And I don't need either of you managing my life. Lauren hissed through her teeth. We'll see about that. That's when I heard it. The sound of a car pulling up behind theirs. Different engine. Different energy. A calm presence, not chaos. I glanced through the side window and nearly laughed at the irony. Because the person stepping out of that car wasn't just unexpected. It was the exact person Michael and Lauren never wanted involved. And they had no idea how much power he held. You ever see someone show up at the exact right moment? Like life finally decides you deserve backup? That's what it felt like when attorney James Nolan stepped out of his car, calm as ever, while Michael and Lauren froze like kids caught stealing cookies. The second his door shut, the pounding on mine stopped. Silence hit the porch so fast it almost felt staged. James adjusted his coat, walked toward the house with steady steps, and gave me a nod through the window. Assuring, confident, the kind that says, I've got you. Michael's voice wavered. Oh, what's he doing here? Lauren stiffened, jaw clenching. Why is your lawyer here? Evelyn, are you serious? James reached the porch, hands in his pockets, expression unreadable. Afternoon, he said simply, like he'd walked into a polite Sunday barbecue rather than a family standoff. I cracked the door open just enough to speak. James, thank you for coming. He nodded once. Figured you might need someone to witness this. Michael stepped forward aggressively. Witness what? We're just trying to help our mother. James lifted an eyebrow. By pounding on her door and threatening to force entry? That's an interesting definition of help. Lauren's voice went shrill again. This is family business. No, James corrected, tone even but sharp. This is a vulnerable adult being harassed in her own home. That's legal business. Michael swallowed hard, thrown off by the calm authority in James's voice. Lauren crossed her arms. We want to make sure she's mentally stable. She's making reckless decisions. James didn't flinch. I completed a full cognitive assessment with her earlier this week. She passed with flying colors. There's no basis for claiming incompetence. Their faces dropped. Mouths open. Caught red-handed in their own scheme. James continued, and just for clarity, any attempt to seize control of her accounts or assets without justification is considered financial abuse under state law. Lauren paled. Michael looked like he'd been punched. I stepped forward then, my voice steady and stronger than I'd felt in years. I'm not incompetent, I said. I'm finally aware. And you two need to leave. Right now. James stood beside me, silent but solid as a wall. Michael looked back and forth between us, frustration turning into something almost like fear. Lauren grabbed his arm. Let's go. This isn't over. They backed off step by step, retreating down the driveway. Their confidence leaking away with every foot they put between us. But the moment they drove off, James turned to me with an expression I didn't expect, and what he told me next changed everything I thought I knew about my own future. You ever brace yourself for bad news? Only to find out the thing someone tells you is so unexpectedly kind that it knocks the wind out of you? That's what happened when James shut the door, turned toward me and said, Evelyn, you need to hear this. For the first time since the whole mess started, the house was quiet. Not tense quiet, not fearful quiet, just calm. Sophie stood beside me, arms crossed, still watching the driveway like Lauren might appear again with a pitchfork. James stepped farther inside, lowering his voice. I didn't want to say this in front of them, he started. But you deserve to know the full truth. My stomach tightened. Go ahead. He pulled a folder from his briefcase and laid it gently on my dining table. I reviewed your financials last night, everything from the past 10 years. I felt my heartbeat slow, heavy, and he looked at me with a mix of sadness and genuine respect. Evelyn, you didn't just support them. You kept them afloat. If you hadn't helped, they would have lost their home twice. Twice. That word hit harder than I expected. Sophie whispered, I knew it. James continued, and they weren't honest with you. Several times, Michael claimed he needed money for emergencies, but those funds went to luxury expenses. He slid a few printouts forward. Travel charges, designer store receipts, $1,000 business brunch. My chest tightened, not from heartbreak, but from the realization that the betrayal went deeper than I'd allowed myself to see. I swallowed. Why are you telling me this now? Because, he said gently, you need to understand you didn't fail them. You didn't abandon them. You protected them for years, even when they didn't appreciate it. I felt tears behind my eyes, the kind that show up not because you're sad, but because someone finally tells you the truth you've been starving to hear. Sophie leaned into me. Grandma, you were never the problem. James nodded. And that brings me to the real reason I came back. He reached into his briefcase again, pulling out a second envelope. This, he said, placing it in my hands, is an option. A way to make sure no one ever controls you, manipulates you, or touches your assets again. I stared at the envelope, heavy in my palm. Evelyn, James said softly, it's time you start living for yourself. But when I opened that envelope, I found something inside I never expected. Something that would flip the entire situation on its head and leave Michael and Lauren powerless for good. You ever open something expecting trouble, but instead find a doorway to the life you should have had decades ago? That's exactly what happened when I tore open that envelope and saw what James had put inside. My hands shook, not from fear, but from anticipation, as I slid the papers out. Sophie watched from across the table, holding her breath like this was the final scene in a courtroom thriller. Inside were 3 documents. The first one? A formal protection order. Not against Michael and Lauren, but to protect my autonomy. A legal shield that ensured no one, not even family, could claim I wasn't capable of managing my life. The second one? A revocable trust, already drafted and ready for signature, placing every asset I owned, my home, my savings, my pension, into a structure only I controlled. And when I passed, everything would go straight to Sophie. Michael and Lauren? Legally removed. Cut out clean. Powerless. But it was the third paper, the smallest one, that hit me the hardest. A letter. Written in James's own handwriting. Evelyn, I've watched you give everything without receiving anything in return. You deserve security, independence, and dignity. If you choose to sign these documents, I will personally oversee your estate, for free, so you never have to worry again. I blinked, stunned. Why would you do all this for me? He smiled gently. Because not everyone in your life has to take. Some of us are here to help. My chest tightened, not with sorrow, but with something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real hope. Sophie squeezed my arm. Grandma, sign it. Please. And for once, I didn't waver. I didn't hesitate. I didn't ask for permission. I picked up the pen and signed every line with a confidence I'd forgotten I had. When it was done, James gathered the papers carefully. It's official, he said. You're protected. Completely. A wave of peace rolled through me. Deep, warm, powerful. I walked to the window and looked out at the quiet street. No angst. No fear. Just clarity. Michael and Lauren would eventually learn they'd lost the grip they never deserved. But me? I finally gained something far more important. Myself. And after 71 long years, that was the beginning, not the end. If you heard my full story, please like, subscribe, and comment.